Howdy fam, welcome to episode 4 of Danger Fruit. In this episode, we're going to talk about the classic 310 to Yuma, 1957, but also its remake in 2007. Let's go!
On the 310 to Yuma.
The original was directed by Delmer Daves. The remake was directed by James Mangold. And the original had Van Heflin and Glenn Ford, powerhouse actors. And 2007 was no slouch with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe to fill their boots. Quick rundown. Ben Wade, infamous outlaw, holds up a stage, gets caught. Dan Evans, farmer in need of some funds, volunteers to help get him to Contention City and get him on the 310 train to Yuma. Now this trip isn't easy, and basically the entire time you're just waiting for things to hit the proverbial fan. Let's jump straight into comparison of these movies. They're the same in name and concept, but we can't just assume that they're going to be the same movie. Because you know what happens when we assume. First, when did these movies come out? The original, in the height of the Cold War. The remake, the same year the iPhone came out. This is two different worlds desiring two different movies. The original's messages were funneled into the national conversation about communism, while the remake had the freedom to kind of just add some spices and play with some of the classic Western tropes. The original 310 to Yuma, along with High Noon, were the deciding factors in Howard Hawks making Rio Bravo. Let us give thanks. So let's talk about Ben and his gang. We open on their shenanigans, and this hold-up scene doesn't really stray too far from one to the other, which is really helpful when you're trying to compare movies, because then you can really lock down how the scene feels because of, technology or cultural modesty, or even maybe what's expected from feature films. The gang holds up a stage. In 2007, though, the stage is fashioned with a Gatling gun, so the body count starts racking up quicker and grows a lot faster. Then in 2007, this stage flips. 2007 is a bear, 1957 is its cub. Either one, Ben kills one of his own in the name of the gang as a whole, and then it becomes clear Ben Wade is a bad man, and those who love him fear him. Now let's talk about Dan Evans and his family. The family dynamic is interesting in the way that it highlights different family dynamics, like the use of female characters. In the original, Dan's wife Alice is an integral part in convincing Dan to become the moral man of strength that he truly is. In the remake, Alice only really speaks out of necessity to drive the plot forward and help us get a better idea of maybe Ben Wade's sort of a creep. But the dynamic changes in the way that the focus changes to the oldest son. And in this movie is a completely different character. In the original, the son wants to be like his father, Dan. In the remake, he is so ashamed of his father and actively lets him know at every moment he possibly can, and seems to be much more attracted to Ben and the life that he leads as a notorious criminal. The remake gives a lot of attention to coughing and even mentions tuberculosis at one point. Tuberculosis was pretty dang common back in the Old West. People were often told to move out west because that would be a better climate for dealing with the disease. There were TB havens, which had places like tuberculosis sanitariums, and those were essentially just privately owned hospitals that specifically were designed to house and isolate TB patients. It's said that Colorado Springs was practically built off of the tuberculosis disease because of their treatment in the later 1800s. It gave rise to higher population and wealth in the area. The two definitely differ in the way that they spend their runtime getting us to the train. The original puts us in the bridal suite for most of the time, while the remake gives us a little more time to spend on the journey getting to Contention. In the original, the bridal suite scene is this psychological showdown between Ben and Dan, and you get to watch Dan transform from that place of weakness and submission to become that man of strength that his wife was constantly trying to remind was inside of him. The journey in the remake allows us to see the chaos that is the new Ben Wade, and it also takes a stab at a different, more understanding view of Native Americans, and specifically in the remake, the Apache Indians. At the ends of these movies, at the climax, it's getting from the hotel to the station, and all the feels come through on that final stretch to the train. The original has Dan, an absolute crack shot, putting men down and getting Ben carefully to the train. The remake feels a little more smash and grab. There's bullets flying everywhere. They're running through the town, which is hilarious because in the remake they decided to give Dan Evans a bum leg, and it's also leaving you like seriously wondering, how are they gonna end this? If you start watching the remake at 1:19 p.m., the train will arrive at 3:10 p.m. real time, and 10 minutes actually passes from the strike of 3 on the clock to the arriving of the train. The remake had the benefit of having a map already laid out for them. They could choose whatever path they wanted to take to get them to the train, and I think what they did in the final scene, it made it its own movie. It was impactful and a great way, I think, to wrap everything up. I love these movies. The original is an absolute classic, and it does a killer job of character development and growth, you know? Gives you permission to use your brain. The remake did a fantastic job of casting. I mean, having Christian Bale and Russell Crowe as the lead men, that's a great start. Ben Foster is Charlie Prince, really embodied being like a turd sidekick. And the guy that plays Tucker, Kevin Durand, I don't know if I've ever seen him in a movie where I didn't think to myself about his character. Yeah, I'd be fine if he got killed off. The original and the choices that it made felt pretty intentional, where in the remake it just didn't really feel that way. And to not have Alice be as prominent of a character in the remake, I think was a disservice. And replacing with that father-son turmoil, I just don't know that you reach such a peak or like reward of something at the end with that. It felt more forced and like to change just for change's sake. This is a classic Western, and it's no surprise that it got a remake. I think the original does a great job of showing character in Westerns and really showing off what you can do when you're really not given much to work with at all. Like in this case, just two guys alone in a room together for a while. Plus, the remake's a fun time. I mean, it's got more violence and action, and it makes it a little more exciting in that way. And if it were a standalone film, I don't know that I personally would feel the need to be critical of that. But in this case, you're a remake of an iconic Western. And not just an iconic Western, but an iconic film. And I just hope that in the future, movies don't get so distracted by explosions to forget that.
On the 310 to Yuma.